I'm here with Nicky and Pippa Gumbel, and they really need no introduction, apart from they are our vicar and they lead the church together. And so we're going to go straight in. Pips, I wanted to ask you a question first. You've sort of been in lockdown for 2 years. Can you tell us about what happened to you?
Back in November 2019, they found this tiny little bit of cancer. And so I had it removed in November 2019. And it took me a bit of, it was a
Well,
bit,
it's 25% of your lung they took out.
yeah, of one lung. I suppose it has been a slightly strange season for me, in that perhaps I haven't been out and seen anyone for a very long time. These things are a shock because you're sailing along in one direction and then something happens. It really is the storm on the lake that comes out of nowhere, and you suddenly think, oh my goodness, you know, what is going on? And I think all I can say is I'm so grateful for everybody who prayed, and so many people prayed. And prayer makes a difference. When you feel frightened or of these things, you can sense the peace of God coming. And I think that is supernatural, because the reality is that fear takes a grip, but the power of God can take that away and bring amazing peace. And I sense that peace. I really did. Some of these things are a struggle, and you are holding on in those times thinking, Lord, where on earth are you, and why are you putting me through it? But God knows his ways are much higher than our ways. We won't understand this side of heaven, but I'm so grateful to God for bringing me through it.
That's amazing. Nicky, I know that health things are something that sort of worry you. Is there something that you've given up for Lent? Am I right?
When I asked Pips what she wanted me to give up for Lent, she said she wanted me to give up worrying. So I said, fine, I'm going to give up worrying.
How do you do that, Nicky? How will you give up worrying?
Well, I think, you know, it's like any temptation, isn't it? You just have to try and resist it. You know, that it's you know, you have to try and resist anger, or, you know, whatever, envy or anything. You just have to, if a thought comes to your head, you have to say, no, that's the wrong thought. I'm not going to do that. So, and sometimes you fail, but it's like if a worrying thought comes to my mind, no, I'm not going to do that till Easter. I'm going to store up all my worries till Easter Day.
I'm going away on Easter Day.
I've heard sort of people talk about how there's the two crises. There is the crisis of the pandemic, and then there's also the crisis of people's mental health. What do you guys have to say about mental health at the moment?
I think people are struggling more than ever in this season. It's a very difficult season. And even strong people are struggling. So I think this season has been extraordinary. And I think there's a lot of healing that needs to be done coming out of this season, you know, physically, emotionally, and mentally as we come out of the season.
Mark Roper, one of the team here, said a really good thing to me last year. He said that when people climb a mountain, as you go up, you put in really big screws into the mountain, and they're like big screws, and you screw them in, and sometimes it takes half an hour to screw a screw in, and you don't need them to climb the mountain. You need them if you fall. And I thought that was really interesting, and I wondered, I asked myself, what are my screws? And I looked around and I just was like, have I got enough? What are your screws?
Feed your relationship with God. And that's like, for me, that's the most important thing. It still is genuinely the most important thing in my life, is to have that time every morning, like, Lord, what are you saying to me? And to read the Bible, expecting God to speak to me each day. That's why I do the Bible in 1 year. That's why I don't want to miss it any more than I don't want to miss breakfast. It's spiritual food. But then you need other things, like relationships are really important. And even if you're on your own, you can connect with people on the telephone. You can connect with people. I think that's one people why people love coming to Alpha. They really connect. Small groups, you can connect with people. There are all kinds of ways you can connect. We need one another. We can't do this alone. And then things like just church online. Even if you can't be in church physically, you can be in church online, and feeding your soul, just listening to uplifting talks, positive uplifting talks, all that kind of stuff is part of a regular diet. But then I think sometimes you also need something like specialist help. Years ago, because of the stuff that I have experienced, the catastrophe, I didn't know it was catastrophizing at the time. I just knew I wasn't good at coping with loss. I only discovered when I went to counseling that I hadn't talked about my father dying. I hadn't even talked to Pips about it. And I hadn't been, when your dad died, I hadn't been able to talk about that to anybody, even Pips, about what happened. So I got 6 sessions of CBT, and it really helped. And I've gone back to that person, like this is probably 7 or 8 years later. And I've had 1 session, I'm going to have another one. And it was really helpful. It's just kind of like a refresher.
That's really good. I know this has been a difficult time. What are the sort of opportunities that are right there that we can't miss right now as the church?
Well, we can't miss the opportunity for people to hear the good news about Jesus in a way that there's never been such an opportunity. Yes, COVID was horrible, is still horrible. It hasn't gone yet, and it's so many people have suffered, lost mental health issues, but God has got people's attention, and it's like, and I'm not for a moment suggesting that God sent it, but God has allowed it, and God is able to use something that is evil for good. Just in the same way, we're coming out to Easter. The cross was the worst event in the history of the universe, but God used it for the salvation of the world. And God is using this as an opportunity. And we've seen that particularly on Alpha, just Alpha Online. More people have access to the gospel through Alpha Online and services online. And, Sunday services, people who couldn't come to church because of disability or age or geography are coming online. People who wouldn't have come to church because they're like Zacchaeus. They don't want Jesus to see them, but they quite want to see him. So Zacchaeus climbed a tree so he couldn't be seen, but so he could see Jesus. And people are exploring anonymously. People are coming on Alpha because it's another less difficult way to find out. They're coming because they can leave at any point. They don't have to go into someone's home or go into a church building. They can just come online for an hour and a half, no travel, no real commitment, and they can come and explore. The great thing about coming on Alpha is not only having a really interesting evening, but you're also connecting with other people and having fascinating conversations. Another massive thing that's arisen at this time is not only do people have a spiritual need, they have an actual physical need. There's never been a time that I can remember in this country where so many people have been without food. Of course, globally, that is always been the case. But in the UK, it's never been on this scale. The number of people who have been in need of food deliveries, medicine deliveries, phone calls in isolation, just help in every way. And so, as you know, we started here, Tom and Sarah Jackson started in Church House, this Love Your Neighbor. Right now, out of Church House, right next door to this building, as you know, out of that one building, they have fed 1 million meals. And then coming together with other churches across the country, over 7.5 million meals. And now, right now, 1 million meals a month. And the need is not going down. In fact, anecdotally, we're hearing more that the need is increasing. And so this is a phenomenal opportunity for the church to be the church and to be seen to be the church. Love Christmas. We reached a Christmas box, reached nearly 800,000 people with sometimes people who, it was their only Christmas present. On the Delgado estate, you know, one of our sites is on the Delgado estate, and they delivered a Christmas box to every door on the Delgado estate, 1,600 doors, I think 5,800 people. First door they knocked on, a woman opened the door and said, I live on my own, I don't have a family, this will be the only Christmas present I get this year. Jesus fed the 5,000 and he preached the gospel to them. And we need to meet the physical need as well as the spiritual need, and the two go together. And sometimes one leads to the other. Joe O'Sullivan, who heads up that project on the Delgado estate, he himself got interested in faith because as a young person living on the World's End estate, his mother, we had a little project there, Sandy Miller set up there on the World's End estate, and his mother got a Christmas box when he was living at home as an atheist teenager. And that led eventually to him, he's about to be ordained as a minister in the Church of England, and will be leading that project on the Delgado estate. More and more people are putting themselves forward for ordination in the Church of England. And what I'm really excited about is the diversity. Bishop Jill Duff, who was one of the people behind the start of the Peter Stream, she said that there are a whole lot of people trapped underground by three things: intellectualism, elitism, and racism. And they're people who have been historically marginalized in the leadership of the Church of England, either for totally different reasons. So one is intellectualism, that's kind of like an education test. And I'm so thrilled now that people are coming forward, outstanding leaders who left school at 13 with no qualifications, but are totally brilliant, who have very high EQ. And then people from different social backgrounds who historically didn't see themselves as being part of the Church of England, and all kinds of barriers were put up to them being ordained. And then a totally different category of people, but again, who've been historically marginalized through racism because of the terrible history of the Church of England in the slave trade and with the Windrush generation that resulted from people being turned away. And therefore they are underrepresented. And to see now that being put right and people coming forward, like, you know, Ryan, for example, you know, like, who was a scholar at Cambridge, but because his mother is Sri Lankan, his father is Indian, he just said, you know, I don't see people like me. I didn't think it was for me. But, and that is a kind of racism that was kind of systemic in the church. And to see that now being reversed in a way, that the people are coming through on the Peter Stream, and the first group of the Peter Stream will be ordained this summer, and that's the first of many, and the numbers are increasing all the time. And you know, people from, I hope many more people, there are thousands of people trapped underground who could be involved in the leadership of the church, ordained ministers in the Church of England. And it will revolutionize the Church of England when that happens. It will be able to reach far wider group of people than it currently reaches, and it will genuinely represent the people in this country. So I'm very excited about what's happening there. This is a really exciting opportunity for the marriage course, which is right across the world. Bible in 1 year is going out has gone out literally to millions of people, and it couldn't be done without all the people at HTB who've given so generously to make this possible. We've got the leadership conference coming up. We've got Focus, which will be done in a different way this year, but that'll also be an amazing opportunity to get together all these city centre church plants. It's so inspiring.
What about the people that are watching? How can they play their part?
Everyone can pray, and it's a spiritual battle that we're involved in, and prayer makes a difference. Everyone can pray for a friend. Everyone can make a phone call, and say, how are you? What are you finding most difficult at this time? And how can I pray for you? And then just pray for them. And prayer makes a difference. We're seeing remarkable healings at this time in answer to prayer. So everyone can pray. Secondly, everyone can serve and volunteer. Everyone can get involved in Love Your Neighbor. Everyone can get involved in a small group, in hosting on Alpha or hosting on the marriage course or some other. Get involved in some area of helping with the children, helping with the youth, helping with the students, helping with the worship, helping with production. That everyone can do something. Everyone can serve, and then everyone can give. Everyone can, because everything the church does is only possible because of the giving of the people.
Do you guys sort of sit down and think, right, what should we give this year, or what should we, and how do you do it? Have you given the same throughout? Do you mind me asking?
There are a lot of people in the church who give far more than we give, but I don't want anyone in the church to give a higher percentage. I want than we give. I want to make sure that we give the highest percentage of our income to the church of anyone. That's what I aspire to. I can't aspire to give them the biggest amount because we don't have it, but we can aspire to give the highest percentage of our money to the church, because I think we're supposed to set an example. When in the Old Testament, whenever they were doing a building project, everyone would give, everyone would come and give, but the leaders gave first, and they had to lead by example. But everybody, they could only do it if everybody gives, and we as a church can only do all the things that we give because everybody gets involved in giving.
There is somebody who works in a block of, there are some smart blocks of flats on the way we walk, huge great blocks of flats, and there's a man there, such a lovely guy called James, who does the rubbish. He's the, I suppose, I don't know what he is,
Like the janitor there.
The janitor. He's always doing the dustbins, clearing up the rubbish, clearing that. He hands us his giving, his tithe, every whatever it is, every month or every whatever, that he gives this his money. And I find it's the most humbling thing that he, who has very little, in a place, working in a place that's so wealthy, he could resent the people he works around, and yet he hands his tithe, his giving to us on a regular basis. And I just hope and pray God blesses him and multiplies it just 100-fold, because I think his giving, it's like the widow's mite. His giving is far more precious than practically anything else.
Is there anything else that you guys want to say?
I think just well done, everybody. I feel it's been tough, but people have really endured well. I think everybody should give themselves a pat on the back and say, well done, you've done well.
Yeah.
It's been a tough time, but you've endured and you've come through this and you've done really, really well.
The other thing I want to say is just thank you. Thank you so much for what you have done in this last year.
Yeah,
thank you so much for your prayers. I know so many people have been praying for us, for their church, for their friends. Thank you for the way you've served. Thank you for all of you, especially who've been involved and still are involved in Love Your Neighbor. I see you coming here and loading the van and driving out to different parts of London to deliver food. Thank you for what you have done. Those of you, hundreds and hundreds of you have hosted Alpha. Hundreds of you have got involved in serving in different ways. And then making phone calls and all that, all the ways in which you've looked after each other. Thank you. And thank you for your giving. I've been just overwhelmed by the generosity of people giving online on Sunday, then giving regularly almost every day. I'm signing letters just saying, and I go, wow, aren't people generous? Thank you so much for your generosity at this time. You have been amazing.